And welcome to our conference call. This is Jennifer Laszlo Mizrahi, founder and president of RespectAbility, a nonprofit organization working to enable people with disabilities to be able to achieve the American dream. This webinar and call is focusing on the 2016 presidential campaign elections and how people with disabilities and people who care about people with disabilities can really make a difference during the campaign cycle. I'm really quite delighted that we have so many people on the call, and additionally that we have such a tremendous leader who is spearheading this initiative for us. Her name is Lauren Appelbaum, and Lauren Appelbaum came to us after a lot of experience in strategic communications and also in working in journalism and in politics and public policy. Again, RespectAbility is a nonprofit organization. We are nonpartisan, which means that we will not be endorsing any presidential candidate. Our goal is to simply educate the public and to enable, in particular, people with disabilities to have the ability to ask candidates key questions that impact our community and to get those questions answered. Our team is made up of people who themselves have disabilities and deep expertise on disability issues. This is a photo of our team, or parts of our team, and you will see that in the orange blazer is Lauren Appelbaum, who came to us after getting a master's degree in journalism. She did her undergrad in journalism. She worked at NBC News, where she helped on a number of things for Chuck Todd at Meet the Press, and also the Today Show and many other shows. My name again is Jennifer, and I'm the one you see in the picture in red. But I want to also really point out a couple key people. In the front row, you see our fellowship director, Randy, who is a wheelchair user on the right, who did his undergrad at Cornell, his graduate work at Yale. We have Justin Chappell and we have Ben Spanglenberg, who are in the front, also wheelchair users, incredibly talented people who have been in Iowa. As has in the back row, you see a gentleman with a blue shirt and a yellow tie. That is Trout, who is on the autism spectrum, and he self-identifies as being on the spectrum when he asks candidates questions. And so our team overall has a lot of experience on disability issues. I myself am a person with disability. I'm highly dyslexic, and we want to be sure that the wide and full range of disability issues is addressed in this 2016 cycle. So Lauren Appelbaum directs this program. She is very, very talented, and so I'm now turning it over to her to lead us in this webinar.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. So I am very grateful that all of you are taking time out of your day to join us. And for those of you who are on the East Coast and digging out from the snow, hopefully you're somewhere warm enjoying this webinar. So I'd like to share some information. RespectAbility, we don't just say, hey, we're going to talk about X, Y, and Z because we feel like we want to talk about that. We really spend the time and figure out what it is that people are talking about and what messages work. So back in 2012, we started doing some polling, and I'm going to give you a quick overview of some poll results on some different messages that worked and such, so you can kind of understand where we're coming from. So in 2012, of a poll of 1,000 likely voters, we found out that the majority of likely voters know someone with a disability, which is not surprising when you think about how many people that there are 56 million Americans with disabilities. And we learned that it can be a voting issue, that there was a significant response to congressional candidates who supported programs for those with disabilities. And so, like I said, more than half of Americans, these likely voters, know someone with a disability. And this is, not just, their neighbor down the street, but a family member or a close friend. We then repeated a similar poll in 2014 and found out that 56% of these likely voters said that they, a family member, or a close friend has a disability. And now we're very careful in everything we do to be completely nonpartisan. So we had both a Democratic and a Republican pollster working on this poll. And Stan Greenberg, who has done several major Democratic candidates, had said that issues of employment among people with disabilities can affect outcomes in competitive races for Senate and governor. His Republican pollster, Whit Ayers, said, "We are accustomed to thinking about soccer moms, Hispanics, or values voters. But this poll shows that Americans with disabilities and those who care deeply about them are a demographic we need to pay attention to in the future." Now, in the last cycle, in 2012, we did not hear the word disability at rallies, town halls, the conventions. There weren't disability platforms like you would find in other places. But then from doing this poll in 2014, we could see that the disability community could be one of those communities that should be addressed by the presidential candidates as well as Senate and governor candidates, but also that the community can really help swing an election. Disability touches more than half of the electorate. And this next slide, it shows that it really spans partisanship. You have 56% of Democrats, 58% of independents, and 56% of Republicans. So it really does not matter if you are a Democrat, if you're a Republican, if you're a moderate. It affects everyone in America. So in this 2014 election, following the election, we found that swing voters in Senate and governor races are more likely to vote for candidates who made a high priority of enabling citizens with disabilities to get jobs and become independent. Also, and this is something that I talk to when I'm talking to campaign staffers, I push this a lot, is that people who have a disability themselves are much more enthusiastic and likely to go out and vote. And so if you see in 2014, the levels of interest was 56% across the general American population, but people with disabilities was 66%. And so by telling candidates and their staffers that the disability community is much more energized, it shows that that people with disabilities are more likely to come out and actually vote, and so it makes sense to be reaching out to our demographic. Now, we wanted to know what it is that disability voters really care about. And so if you look here, and I'm going to bring up a pointer to help, the average, 2014 voter, their biggest issue was position on economy, jobs, and wages. When we asked the disability community, the same thing, and even by a higher margin for the second one, which was new health care, which was the new health care law. So we know that the disability community cares very much about economy, jobs, and wages. So what does this mean for 2016? 1 in 5 Americans have a disability themselves. That's 20% of the American populace. 56 million Americans makes us the largest minority group in America. A lot of people talk about people who are Hispanic or African Americans, and not realizing that people with disabilities is the largest minority group. So that means if people with disabilities get out and vote, it can really swing an election. On the next slide, you'll see a graphic that talks about the first 4 states. And so we have been paying attention this cycle to Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and South Carolina because that's where the candidates have been spending most of their time. After Iowa and New Hampshire, we may see some candidates drop out. And so, so we've had several meetings and events in Iowa and New Hampshire, and we've been kind of showing what it really means in those specific states. For example, more than 350,000 people with disabilities live in Iowa. 170,000 of them are of working age, and we also then take the rate of people with disabilities who are employed and compare that to people without disabilities and to show the difference here. And this is actually something that we've printed out and taken with us on the trail, which I'm going to be talking about momentarily, in Iowa and New Hampshire to share with journalists as well as with the campaigns and their staffers. So, as I mentioned, we are busy, and I just threw up a few pictures of myself out there on the trail. I have to say, though, that members of my team have been doing much more of this than me, and I am so proud. There is a piece in The Atlantic just published today that profiles 4 of our fellows who are out on the campaign trail, and we will send that link around to everyone who is RSVP for this call. It really shows how these 4 folks are, spent time, some of them during their break from grad school and others during their break from jobs, to really go out and be on the trail that Jennifer had introduced earlier and to really be making a difference. It is very vital to get all of the candidates on both sides of the aisle to speak directly to voters with disabilities and their families by offering specific plans for a better future. And you'll see some pictures here. We have, obviously, we're reaching out to all candidates on both sides of the aisle. Yeah, this is Justin Chappell here interviewing Bernie Sanders in Iowa in November. Our fellow James Trout, who had asked Martin O'Malley a question in New Hampshire in December. And then our team members, Ryan Noble and Justin Chappell again, taking a selfie with Hillary Clinton in Iowa in January. So we're pretty much everywhere. And like I said, we are very active with the Republicans as well. We reached out to 100% of the candidates on both sides of the aisle. I did not have space to show all the Republicans, but you'll see here with Donald Trump, John Kasich, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, and Ted Cruz. So what have we been doing? We've been going to these states and we've been holding briefings where we've invited the state directors and political directors and other members of the teams to come and join us. And you'll see back in November, we had a meeting in Iowa. This was our 3rd such meeting, and we had representatives of the Sanders, Bush, Clinton, O'Malley, and Santorum campaigns join us. We met with about 30 disability leaders in Iowa who came, and we sat down and we had breakfast for a while, and then we invited all the campaigns to join us, where everyone in the community was able to talk about the issues of importance. And then most recently we had a meeting in New Hampshire, and that's a picture of myself speaking with Stephanie Carlton, who's a senior advisor for the Jeb Bush campaign. She actually flew up from Florida for this meeting as the campaign was taking more of an interest in disability issues. While we're on the road, we are actively covering events as press. You'll see Justin Chappell with myself at the Democratic debate in Des Moines, Iowa. And so we are able to get press credentials for things like debates for our publication, the RespectAbility Report. And then we turn around and interview the candidates. You can see Jennifer Mizrahi, our president, interviewing Jeb Bush at an event where we were able to, on the sidelines of another event in D.C., ask the candidates to come join us to talk about these issues slightly more in depth, which all of the videos have been posted to our YouTube channel and shared on the RespectAbility report. And then while we're out there, as I mentioned, I told you about the Atlantic piece. We have been active and telling journalists, you'll see this is a Bloomberg reporter talking with our fellow James Trout about his experiences on the trail. And now one interesting story is that while some of our fellows may personally be interested in a candidate or a party, they've learned how to be nonpartisan while out on the trail covering these issues, because disability issues is not a partisan issue, and if it were to ever become a partisan issue, we would all lose. And so, but while we're out there, we are busy talking to the press, encouraging them to cover these issues and explaining to them what it is that we are doing. So what can you do? 1, get informed. I mentioned the RespectAbility Report. It's a nonpartisan political commentary on the 2016 U.S. elections with a focus on disability issues. We will never rate or endorse a candidate, but instead provide fact-based updates and analysis from a staff based around the entire country. One thing that we are working on, and we will be releasing some results this week, is our PwDs Vote 2016 campaign scorecard. We reached out to 100% of the campaigns with a list of 16 questions that we had collaborated with several other disability organizations in D.C., Iowa, New Hampshire, and elsewhere, asking about a variety of issues from employment to housing to transportation to veterans issues. You name it, we hopefully covered it. And we've asked the candidates, the campaigns, to respond to all this, not just by giving us answers, but by posting it on their websites so that people, anyone searching for different issues will see that the disability community is one of the categories that the campaigns are reaching out to. And we want to be included, just like if people are talking about African Americans or minorities or any other minority, that people with disabilities is included in that group. So, can you do this stuff? Of course you can. Anyone with a smartphone, an iPad, or a friend with one of those can go to an event and ask a candidate to talk about an issue. So you'll see here, this is our fellow Justin Chappell interviewing Senator Bernie Sanders. He attended an event and he was asking a question, and he is sitting in a wheelchair and holding up an iPad and recording the answer. And this is something that we welcome everyone in the community to do. And the more people that ask a candidate about an issue, the more likely he or she will create a real policy to address these issues. We've asked debate moderators and journalists from the main networks, what will it take for you to cover these issues? And their responses always are the same. They say, we need people to go to events, town halls, ask the candidates these questions. The candidates will continue answering these questions. The more often they are asked it, the more likely they will to put it in their stump speech. The more the candidates talk about it, then the journalists will start paying attention. And then as the journalists start paying attention, there will be more questions asked at events and debates, and then it will be paid more attention to by the national, everyday average American who can then learn about the importance of these issues. And then we know that it's not easy to attend events. If you're based in Iowa or New Hampshire, you're probably already going to events. If you're based somewhere else in the country, maybe candidates haven't yet come to your area. But we are willing to help you do this work. We're working with a woman in Minnesota who has been traveling down to Iowa, and she's been asking questions. And we know it's not easy, so we're willing to help pay for gas, and things like that. And every time that you get a successful interview on video that is usable that we can share on the Respectability Report, we'll give you we will give you a stipend for that. So, and I can give you more information about that. I'll give it to you at the end, but you can jot down my email address right now, which is Lauren A, LAURENA at respectabilityusa.org. And I'd love to be working with all of you around the country to make this continue to happen. So we're going to be in Manchester, New Hampshire from February 1st through February 10th. A team of 7 of us throughout this period of time will be in and out. We'll be based in Manchester, but traveling around New Hampshire. Now, why is this important? So on Monday, February 1st, the people will cast their first votes at the Iowa caucus. Then just 9 days later, on Tuesday, February 9th, will be the New Hampshire primary. So between the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary, nearly all of the candidates will be spending almost all of their time there. So we could have upwards of 200 to 300 events happening during that 10-day period, all in New Hampshire. And so while we're going to have, 6 of us or so in New Hampshire attending these events and asking the candidates questions and recording their answers and covering it for the Respectability Report, we can't be everywhere. So if you want to come out there and help us and do this, we'd be very grateful for that. If you're based in New Hampshire or Massachusetts and can drive on over, we're glad to have you on our team. If you're in New Hampshire but maybe you don't want to drive, we have rental cars. We'll pick you up. If you want information about our hotels and all of that, you can email me, and I will work with you to help make this all happen. I've listed some other important dates. So you'll see also in February, we'll have the Nevada caucus and the South Carolina primary. And then on Tuesday, March 1st, is Super Tuesday, where people will be voting in 15 different locations. So why is this important? Because after the first 4 states, candidates are everywhere, all around the country. So we will never have this opportunity again during this election to have all of the candidates in one place that is geographically easy for us to be driving from place to place to be covering all these candidates. Now, what happens after once everyone is all over the states? Well, that's where you can certainly play a role, that if you haven't been able to join us in Iowa or New Hampshire, but now the candidates are coming to your neighborhood, you can go out there and be pressing them on these issues. Because it could be a long haul in both the Democratic and the Republican cycles where people might not drop out for a long time. So if we keep pressing on these issues, then we will have success. What about, if you're like, I can't really get out, it's easier for me to just kind of do something. Have you ever heard of armchair activism? With social media, now you can become an easy activist where you don't even have to get up out of your seats. We invite you to join our social media team if you're active on Facebook, Twitter, or another platform. I know we send out lots of emails and we try to not send out too many. So if you are interested in receiving social media updates, things that you can copy and paste and share, sign up for our social media team and I can send you these updates. Write an op-ed or a letter to the editor. We encourage you to write your own op-eds. Personal stories and local insights can be very powerful. So if you're based in one of these early states and you write something, you're going to have a much higher chance of getting published than if someone based out of Washington, D.C., were to write something to get published. We did a webinar about this, and so you can watch that to learn everything that you'd like to know. And once again, if you have any questions about this, you're going to have a chance to ask them when I finish speaking shortly, or you can email me to follow up. Host a debate watching party. Invite your friends to come over and talk about these issues. During the debate, we encourage you to tweet the candidates and their staff. Just because you're not the debate moderator does not mean you can't reach out and ask the candidates your questions. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about Twitter. If you're not on Twitter, that's okay. Bear with me. We'll get to something in a moment. But we spent some time and we looked and we created a list of influential people, the presidential candidates, the 2016 presidential campaign staffers, and the most influential political journalists. So you can tweet the candidates, and I recommend don't just tweet the person that you support. You want to tweet all of them. And not just the candidates, tweet their staff as well. Because you could find that candidate A's New Hampshire state director is really interested in these issues and might retweet everything you do and then share it on his or her social media platforms. And so it's a great way to make sure that they see these materials. And remember, disability rights is not a partisan issue. So I've given you a few sample tweets. For example, the presidential candidate or staff member, people with disabilities are the nation's largest minority group. What will you do to help us enter workforce? And we use the hashtag PwDsVote. PwDs vote. And so by doing that, we're able to kind of have them all in one place and people can click on it and see all the other tweets that people are using with this hashtag. One other issue that we're doing is why is a website not accessible for everyone? Why aren't there captions like you can see on this webinar? And then we will tweet political journalists saying, why aren't presidential candidates talking about people with disabilities? We're the largest minority group in the U.S. So lots of different things you can do. These are just a few sample tweets. I can send you hundreds if you're interested. Most importantly, register to vote. You can't necessarily make a difference if you don't actually go and vote. Very quickly, I want to just go over how there's one issue that we are working on is voting place accessibility. In 2008, only 27% of polling places were fully accessible, with issues such as inaccessibility to actually get in the door. Or maybe even if there's snow and you can't even get to the location because they didn't pave the parking lot. And one thing we're working on right now with our partners in Iowa is that not all of the Iowa caucus locations are accessible. Private homes, churches are not bound by Americans with Disabilities Act regulations. So working with the Democratic and Republican Iowa parties in terms of making sure that people have access to actually attend the caucus and vote for the person that they want to vote for. So here are a few resources that could be of interest to you, and I believe we will send out this PowerPoint to everyone who has RSVP'd, so you'll be able to see this more information as well. I want to thank all of you for joining us today, and now we're going to open it up for any questions you might have.
Operator, if you can go ahead and explain to people how they can ask questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. Ladies and gentlemen, you can ask questions via the chat window located in the lower left corner, or you can, if you've dialed in, you can press 7 and the hash key on your phone now to queue up for verbal questions.
Well, Lauren is getting caught up on reading all the questions that I've had a chance to read, mostly by Arielle from Texas, who's been emailing us. She's been sending us a lot of questions that she has for presidential candidates, very, very important questions. So the best way sorry?
If I can say, I don't have any questions. So where are the questions that have been sent?
On the left side of the screen, there's a chart.
Okay.
And so Arielle has been asking about a number of different policy issues, including student loans, for example. So Arielle, what I advise to you is that you start tweeting at the candidates. So earlier, we showed you that we have a number of lists. And again, you're going to be getting this PowerPoint. So I'm going to go back a couple pages, and I'm going to just show you that when you go and tweet, if you're on Twitter, and you can do this with Facebook, there are these lists. And so you'll go to this PowerPoint that we're sending you, and we'll send it to everyone on this call, and you can just click on the blue that says presidential candidates, and up will pop all of the Twitter hashtags, Twitter addresses for all the candidates, and you should send your questions to each of these candidates. It's about 16 candidates. If you have more time than just sending the 16 tweets, you can definitely do that with the presidential campaign staffers and the most important journalists. But also keep in mind these big events. Like tonight we have an event, I believe it's CNN who's hosting the Democratic candidates at a town hall meeting. So you can tweet at the CNN anchors and ask them to be ask questions about this tonight, because if they ask them on national television, obviously it'll get a lot more exposure. Lauren, I don't know if you're seeing the questions, but I'll read out loud what Sharon asked. Sharon asked, candidates need to be addressed about PwDs with handicap licensing, parking, over access aisles all over the world. I would love to work with RespectAbility. Well, we would love to work with you. Lauren, can you talk a little bit about handicap parking and how that played a role early in the campaign cycle?
Talking about with Hillary Clinton?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So way back in the early part of the 2016 campaign in April, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was campaigning, and her campaign van, parked in a handicapped parking spot. And, some media picked it up as saying, like, well, maybe this isn't, like, the best thing to do. She's not leading by example. And so we at RespectAbility, I wasn't here yet, but we had pushed that out as well as a story saying, that someone at her stature should really be leading by example and not blocking a handicapped parking spot. Since then, we have met with the campaign several times, talked with the candidate herself, and she now has a disability platform on her website, and has started talking about these issues on the campaign trail, including, as you probably all know, addressing autism in depth. So when there is an issue like this, we really do take it strongly and go to the candidates and their campaigns and try to educate them on the importance of this. And so also in this, is we have been working with the folks in Iowa who are running the caucuses on the importance of making sure that their parking lots are clear, and especially the handicap parking spots are open for when people arrive to caucus, and the same thing in New Hampshire when people arrive for a primary, that, with these elections occurring during winter time where snow is a probability, to ensure that people who need those parking spots up front have access to them.
Before we go to Christina's question, operator, can you explain how people on the call can get into a queue if they have a question and they're on the telephone?
Absolutely. If you have called in, please press 7 followed by the hash key or the pound sign on your phone now to be released to present your question.
So that's 7 and then the hashtag. So we're going to go to Christina, who says Lauren was asked Lauren about people who are deaf or hard of hearing and how those issues are impacting the campaign and whether those voters are being underrepresented. So can you address the issues regarding people who have either actually hearing or vision differences?
Yes. So this is something that we have pressed the campaigns on since the beginning. We've been pushing specifically with their websites to make sure that they are more accessible. A lot of campaigns post videos on Facebook and YouTube and Vimeo. All three platforms allow for people to add captions and allow you to do so for free. Now YouTube offers a thing where you can just kind of click the CC button and it'll try its best to match stuff up. But if you've ever gotten into a text conversation using autocorrect, I'm sure you found some pretty funny inaccuracies. And same thing happens with YouTube to an even higher extent. So we've been working with the campaigns, encouraging them to go in by hand and actually go and put in the correct captions. Now, while almost all of the campaigns have some of their videos with captions, none of the campaigns have 100% of their videos with captions, with actual accurate handwritten captions versus just using the YouTube the YouTube autocorrect. So we have been pushing there. In addition, we have been educating the campaigns about ensuring that their websites are screen reader accessible for people who need that. And then we've talked a lot about events accessibility, about having seating for people with wheelchairs and ensuring that people with wheelchairs are able to arrive and get to that seating without an issue. And then something that has come up recently as we've been working with a family in Iowa with a teenage son with autism who was asking for seating that wasn't necessarily in a crowd, because everyone knows that with a variety of disabilities in terms of looking for different situations. And so explaining to the campaigns that sometimes people just need a little bit more space, and campaign events can be so crowded, so maybe even if you're not in a wheelchair, that there would be another reason for someone to be wanting to sit in the ADA section. And then we have also been talking about the importance of ASL interpreters. And we've been happy to notice that at most of the Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders events, there are now interpreters. We had an event in Nevada a few months ago, and prior to the Las Vegas Democratic debate. And while we were there, we were talking about these issues, and a representative from the Hillary Clinton campaign said, like, oh, we're having a debate watching party tomorrow night. And we said, oh, are you going to have an ASL interpreter? Turns out they ended up having an ASL interpreter and shared that with the community. And so then there was a group of people who needed the interpreter there. And when Hillary Clinton walked into the room, she walked over to them first, signing, "I love you." And while that's just, a gesture that doesn't necessarily mean much, it's the fact that they now have an ASL interpreter at almost every single one of their events is something that we find so important. And it's something that we've talked to all of the campaigns about. Now, obviously, some of the smaller campaigns don't necessarily have the funds or the time to do everything, so we've been kind of explaining to them what they can do for free and least expensively and least time-consuming. And these are the things that we've been pushing. Now, we've also talked to, for example, the Donald Trump campaign, which doesn't necessarily have to worry about money, about the issue of having captions and CART at their big rallies for people who would like that. So we really are pushing it from all different ways. And you would also, I think, ask about if you're being underrepresented. So we in talking to the campaigns, we have talked about the importance of, addressing people of all abilities on their platforms. So if they're talking about jobs, for example, to include the phrase of people of all abilities, to kind of include everyone, and to not necessarily just have a separate platform about people with disabilities, but to also include people with disabilities in every single platform that they're doing, on jobs, on education, on healthcare, that we are a community that can be included in every single every single platform that they are working on. And I would encourage you to become more involved, and one way you can do that is by attending these events. And when you go to attend an event, to let people know what you need. We've been very happy to see that on Jeb Bush's RSVP forms, there is a box that says, do you need any accommodations? To date, we have not seen that on any other candidates' RSVP forms, though it could exist, but we have not seen it. And so that's something else that we've asked the campaigns to do, that as they are having these events, to ask people what accommodations they may need. And of course, could have a clarification on there that they might not be able to get whatever accommodation is requested, especially if it's done so right before the event starts. But by the campaigns even having this as an option for people to ask this, the campaigns are starting to get it and realizing what it is and how it's not difficult to accommodate people of all abilities.
Thank you, Lauren. Operator, are there any people on the phone who have a question, who've done that the 7 hashtags so that they can have their questions?
Yes, we do. We have a question from Ramsey Lee.
Great.
Ramsey, go right ahead. You are now live. Ramsey, your phone might be muted.
Thank you for hosting this. Do you know if the candidates are coming to Wisconsin anytime soon?
If the candidates are coming where?
To Wisconsin.
Wisconsin, is that what you said?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. As of now, I am not sure, but it's something that I can look up and get you that information. I am just looking up when the Wisconsin primary is. I do not have them all memorized. So the Wisconsin primary will be held on April 5th. So it is likely that they unfortunately will not be coming to your state until at least March, although there might be a few events here or there.
Okay, do you know if they're coming to Minnesota anytime soon?
Possibly. I actually heard that Hillary Clinton is coming to Minnesota this week. I will follow up with you via email with the candidates with some information where you can find this information.
We have had some people from other states go to Iowa, and we're hoping that people will join us for those dates that were given that are the key New Hampshire dates. The thing about New Hampshire, as Lauren Appelbaum said previously, is that you have 100% of the candidates there for this stretch of time between the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary. So literally there will be more than 200 different events happening over a 10-day period of time, all of them free, so that all you need is to join us. We're going to be staying at an inexpensive hotel. We can even find roommates for people. We'll have rent-a-cars. You can join our team, so you don't have to go out by yourself and feel like, well, if I fly there, who will I go with? You can join our teams. We'll have multiple teams going around to different candidate events where you can ask questions, and we'd be delighted to have people join us. Operator, are there any more questions that are on the phone?
So before that, Ramsey, I just want to say that there are candidates who will be in Iowa close to the Wisconsin border between now and February 1st. And so the Des Moines Register, they have a thing called the Iowa Caucus Candidate Tracker. and you can see where all the candidates will be in Iowa through the caucus. And so you can see if there are any that are going to be near the Wisconsin border if you'd be interested in driving over.
Operator, were there any questioners?
No other questions on queue. Again, as a reminder, please press 7 followed by the hash key on your phone now to queue up for verbal questions.
So this is Jennifer again, and I just want to thank everyone for joining us and to remind everybody how much you can make a difference. We're hoping that you will tweet out to the candidates. We're hoping that you'll join us in Iowa or New Hampshire, especially New Hampshire. We'll have a team of 7 people and would love to have many, many more people come with us in New Hampshire for the 10-day period of time. We'd love to have help from people who are willing to do some tweeting on these different issues. You can see Lauren Appelbaum's email address. That's laurena@respectabilityusa.org because she can always give you keen information of things to tweet. For example, we did have a question about accessibility for people who are deaf. We have different kinds of fact sheets and backgrounders to explain to a candidate how to do captions and to do it for free, for example, that can be tweeted to all the candidates. We're looking for all the campaigns to have their disability statements out. We ask them to all have something on their website by close of business today. As of now, I know for a fact that we have candidate disability statements from Hillary Clinton, from Jeb Bush, from Senator Sanders, and from Senator Rick Santorum. We also see some disability issues from John Kasich on his website already, and we're looking to see disability issues from all the campaigns. If you go to the RespectAbility report, you can see that we've covered 100% of the candidates in a nonpartisan way, and that we've gotten facts and information on their views on disability issues from 100% of the candidates. There are huge variances, between the different candidates on how they would approach various different issues. So I do invite you to take a look at them. All of the videos that we have from the candidates, and we try whenever possible to videotape them saying whatever they're saying, are on our YouTube channel, which you can find on YouTube. It's RespectAbility USA. So if you want to see how the candidates are interacting, I think it's interesting. It's interesting to me to see when a candidate speaks to somebody who is using a wheelchair, whether they try and be at the same level as that individual who's a wheelchair user or not, for example. And sometimes you can see stuff in body language that I think sends some interesting information. I want to thank those who are on our team who have really spent a lot of time almost living in Iowa and New Hampshire, whether that's James Trout and Dahlia Joseph and Justin Chappell and Ben Spenglenborg, but also, Ryan Noble and Garrett Patterson and Jane Strauss, who've all been traveling on the campaign trail for us for this. I want to also highlight the new article in today's Atlantic magazine online done by reporter David Perry that I think gives a really good flavor of what it's like to be out on the campaign trail. Hopefully that'll help entice you to join us and be citizen journalists out on the campaign trail. Thank you, Lauren Appelbaum, for everything you're doing. Thank you, everyone who's joined us for this webinar and call. And thank you, Confortel and the Captionist, for making this accessible to all. Thank you, and if you have any questions, again, it's laurena@respectabilityusa.org is your best address. We look forward to working with you and partnering with you as we all work collectively to enable the 56 million Americans who have disabilities to be able to have a better future. Thank you.